Welcome back, my fellow Python programmers, to a brand new video, and in this one I'm going to be showing you how you can learn Python in 2024. So it's a new year, it's a new you, it's a new me, and one of your resolutions was probably how you can learn Python in 2024, which is this year. And I'm going to show you how you can do exactly that. Before I do, I want to just tell you a little bit about myself so that you know why I do have the credentials to talk about this. My name is Michael. I'm the founder of a teaching institute that is called 2M Python Development, and I've helped thousands of students achieve their goals of becoming Python programmers. Most of these students were complete beginners, so they had no prior programming experience, and they were able to go from that complete beginner level to absolute mastery of all things Python. I've done this through many different ways, like courses that I hosted on different platforms and also through one-on-one private tutoring. And I promise you, I'm not here to sell you anything. At the end of this video, you don't have to buy anything from me. I'm just telling you these things so that you know that I am indeed qualified and that I know a thing or two about the journey and the mindset that you should have to go from a complete beginner to an absolute master. So let me tell you a little bit about my goal in this video. My goal is to help you or help any person of any age to learn Python, because sometimes it might be scary, it might be a little daunting. Where should you start? What mindset should you have? What's the first step that you should take? What are the resources that you should be looking at? I'm going to tell you all about these things in this video. First of all, I'm going to give you a quick background of what Python is and why it was a good choice for you to start learning Python. Then I'm going to give you a quick outline of what are the steps, the basics, the intermediate, the advanced, all of that good stuff. I'm going to show you a couple of resources that you can go to start learning Python. And finally, I'm going to give you a few tips about the motivation and mindset that you should have throughout this journey, because believe it or not, most of the students that come to us are usually students that they don't lack motivation, they know where to start, they know everything, but the only problem is consistency. They tell me, oh, I started learning Python in 2020, then I started learning Python again in 2021, and then I started learning Python last year. So every single time they start, but then they stop, not because of lack of motivation, but because of inconsistency. So I know what mindset and what frame of mind you should have in order to finish this journey from start to finish. I said finish 2 times. But anyways, why should you learn Python in the first place? I assume you've already done a little bit of research before looking at Python, or maybe you haven't. First of all, Python is extremely versatile, meaning that if you start learning Python, you can then delve into any other area when it comes to programming. It's one of the most popular ones, it's the one that's most in demand in the market today, and it's also the easiest one to get into. I'm going to elaborate on these later on, but Python is used for machine learning, AI, web development, game development, and so many more things. And that's because it has extensive libraries that cover everything that you can even imagine in programming. So what are the initial first steps that you need to take in order to start your journey? First of all, if you want, you can watch a video that I uploaded recently about downloading Python, setting everything up, and just creating your first project. But as the video states, I'm going to tell this again right here. The first thing that you need to do is you need to download Python and download an IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and it's going to be the tool that you use in order to write Python code. There are many different IDEs that you can pick from, like Visual Studio Code, PyCharm, IntelliJ, etc., etc. I personally like to use PyCharm because it's super easy to download, super easy to set up, and it's made only for Python, so it's the easiest one to integrate with the Python that you've already downloaded. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the basics that you need to learn. So first of all, you have creating variables and different data types, printing out these variables and printing out just different sentences. You have lists, tuples, for loops, while loops, and if statements. So these are the basics. The basics are simply knowing how to interact with Python and with programming in general. So the if statements are sometimes called conditional statements. It's when you execute a certain code after a specific condition has been satisfied. And for loops or while loops is just an action that you want to perform several times without having to duplicate these lines. And these are two extremely powerful tools. These are the basics in any programming language. Next, you're going to move on to the slightly more advanced topics like functions, dictionaries, object-oriented programming, and reading and writing files. These are not super advanced. If some of you have already learned a little bit of Python, you're like, what the heck is he even talking about? These are still in the basics, but these are slightly more advanced than the things that I told you about earlier. But don't worry if these words are so foreign to you and you're like, oh my god, this is starting to get overwhelming. Keep in mind that at this point you've covered the basics, you've lived with Python for a few weeks, and the new things are just complements to what you've already learned. And then finally, after you cover the basics and you cover the more advanced topics, you have these specializations. And again, these are going to be very, very fancy words, but I'm just giving you all of this information and so that you can then go research these on your own if you like. So first you have data analysis and visualization. This is where you start looking into different Python libraries. You have NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, and these are just a few of the libraries that you're going to be using when it comes to data analysis and visualization. Next, you have machine learning. This is where the most craze comes into play, but in my opinion, machine learning is just a fancy statistics tool. But still, you use TensorFlow, you use PyTorch, and you use scikit-learn. Again, these are all fancy names for very typical libraries. Next, you have web development. So if you want to create a website, you have Django and Flask, and Python is used for both front-end and back-end development. If you don't know what these are, just imagine Instagram. Front-end is the screen that you see and you like and you scroll. This is called the front-end. This is what the user sees. The back-end is when you actually like a video or like a photo or like my photo, and then I see your like. So the transfer of likes is the back-end. Next, you have cybersecurity and cryptography. And again, with the rise of applications and web development, all of that will be integrated with security, but you can go specifically into that field using Python. Again, super important. We all use the internet. We all need to have a safe connection over the web. And of course, from here, you can become a hacker, but of course, a white hat hacker. And finally, you have database interaction. This is where you actually communicate with a huge data center. So for example, when you open up any website, let's say Facebook, for example, and you go and look into my page and you look at all the videos and all of those stuff, these are all set and loaded onto a database, which is just similar to your computer. It just has thousands of terabytes of available space, and the way that you are able to access this video is through database interaction. And again, in here you start learning a sort of a new language, that is the SQL language, but still you use SQL language with Python. Okay, so all of that was very fancy words, data science, data analysis, yada yada yada. Where should you actually start? What are the resources that you should start looking into? First, let's get this out of the way. No, you don't need a university degree. It's a good idea to go to university just because they have two very important things. One, they provide you with a step-by-step guide, so you know exactly the things that you're going to learn, and they cover everything that you need in order to become a good programmer. And also they give you a degree at the end that shows an employer that you actually know the things that university taught you. But now, in this modern day and age, employers are more willing to trust students that actually learned online on their own. But that is not for free, because you have to actually ace a certain technical interview at that company, and you also have to provide that company with a portfolio of projects. So this is something that I just wanted to tell you before we move on. First resource, very simple resource, YouTube, and you can watch 2M Python Dev and learn everything. The best channel for Python learning. No, I'm just joking, even though it's true. I am very, very good at teaching Python. There are a lot of YouTube channels out there. No name comes to the top of my head, but just go into YouTube and search Python course or whatever, and you'll see that you have 9 hours, 12 hours playlists of people teaching Python. Now, what differentiates me from other people is that I chose to go into a very specific path this time, in a very unique way of teaching Python. So if you want, I do recommend that you check out my videos as well. I have many projects on there. Now, enough for the plugging. Let me tell you why sometimes YouTube might not be the best place to learn Python. Even though the things that these YouTubers, me included, cover are very extensive and are very good for you to get started, a better place is to go into a platform such as Udemy to learn proper Python programming. And the reason I say this is going to be very evident when I tell you the following fact. If you look at the longest YouTube video right now for Python course, it will be maybe 12, maybe 15 hours long. I mean, I don't even think there's a 15-hour long video. Most of them are between the 4 and the 12-hour mark. But if you go on Udemy, on the other hand, you're going to find that you have courses that are 30 plus hours. Like, for example, the main course that I sell is now around 40 hours, I think, including all of the different projects that we go through and etc. So keep that in mind when you're looking for 3 resources to learn Python. You have the free resources on YouTube. If you want to pay, for example, for a course on Udemy, $10, $12, you can pay for that. You'll get more education, and I do recommend that you pay for your courses and you don't just pirate them. And the next resource, which is even more expensive but even more extensive, is a Python book. Now, Python books are very, very heavy duty things to learn from, but the things that I learned from reading extensive Python books, extensive programming books in general, is an unbeatable knowledge when it comes to programming. Even though it's much harder, it's much more boring to learn from a book, and I would recommend that you learn from a course. That's the best option. And a book, keep in mind, a book is $60. So once you get it, you're just committed to it. You can just throw it to the side. $60 is a substantial amount in my opinion. But a book will cover every single minute detail in Python. And you might be thinking, well, do I really need to know every single minute detail in Python? No, you don't. But if you do know the minute details and you really get absorbed into this world of programming, once you start learning the more advanced stuff and the new stuff that you will learn later on to specialize, like pandas, numpy, etc., because you went through a lot of hardship and you went into the minute details of Python, learning the more advanced stuff is going to become easier. I hope that makes sense. Because if you just learn the surface level stuff, like from a YouTube video or just a course, that's good, that's not bad. It will help you land a job sometimes in the future, but when you start learning the more advanced stuff, or even in technical interviews, some stuff will not make sense to you. So if you learn from a book, everything is going to be covered. And finally, let's talk about mindset and staying motivated. So first of all, the most important thing is to set clear and realistic goals. Next, I want you to create a learning schedule. As I told you, consistency is the most important key, and that's why a lot of students pay us a lot of money just because we help them stay consistent. So I want you, once you start this journey, I want you to allocate a specific time during the week. I think a healthy amount would be 3 to 5 hours per week at least. That's if you're really busy. If you're just a student that doesn't have anything and you're just watching TV the whole day, you can go up to 12 hours per week. But the most important thing is to develop the habit of programming. So let's say you choose a course, you choose a YouTube video, whatever, let's say the length is 20 hours, just a number. You have to write down, okay, this 20-hour course, and keep in mind 1 hour is gonna take you about 3 hours to fully understand, because you will rewatch, you will pause, you're going to be writing the code after the person, etc. So 20 hours is gonna take you 60, which is about 1 month. So you have to write down, that's a clear-cut goal. This month, I'm going to finish this course. And you just develop the habit and you just stay consistent and you work and you work and you work. Next thing, something that's very important and very close to my heart is I really love for students to just appreciate and celebrate the small wins, because honestly, like, why are we doing all of this? Is it for just the knowledge? Is it for the money? I mean, we're all gonna die, and I think that you should always appreciate the small moments. So whenever you learn something new, whenever something clicks, whenever, I don't know, something happens and you're like, oh my god, I finally learned this, I finally understood how these freaking for loops work, take a moment and give yourself credit. Or if you're working somewhere, like if you're doing one of my videos, just write in the comments like, hell yeah, I was able to do this, like this comment, because I hope it happens to you as well, something like that. And finally, about staying motivated, I would highly recommend that you keep track of your progress. What I like to do is I like to keep a small journal. It could be electronic or it could be like something that you write down with your hand. Just keep track of the things that you've learned. So for example, let's say you learned if statements. You're like, okay, I learned if statements, and then you learn how to, I don't know, use the else with the if, and you're like, okay, today I learned the else with the if and I can use it for such and such. This is a very good way of just reflecting on how far you've come in your journey and what you've done so far. And also it's very important because later on, if you ever, like, let's say you're like, oh, how does the else statement works in an if, you can always open up your journal, check where you learned it with a timestamp or a date or whatever, and then you can go back to the video where the else was explained and you can rewatch that and you're like, oh, this is how it works. All right, excellent, and just continue. Now let's talk about a few of the challenges that you're going to face along your journey. First of all, feeling overwhelmed. This is the main cause of people leaving, other than consistency, because this actually impacts consistency. So you start off, it's really fun, it's all fun and games, like you're learning data, you're creating variables, hee hee ha, you make an if statement, it's like super easy. But then when it comes to for loops, things get a little bit more complex and you're like, oh my god, like what's happening? And you spend like 2, 3, 4, 10 hours in a row still not really getting the things that you're learning, and this is where your motivation starts to dip and you start doubting yourself, you start feeling overwhelmed, you start asking questions like, am I really made for this? Can I become a programmer? And that's where things start going downhill. A great example that I like to tell my students is that, and of course you've heard this before, but this is not a sprint. You're not trying to win as fast as possible. This is a marathon. So for example, imagine you're trying to catch a rabbit. So you'll never be able to catch up to a rabbit because the rabbit is really fast. So if you're trying to sprint towards the rabbit, you're never gonna catch it. What you should be thinking of is like the turtle. The turtle is all about consistency. So let's say the rabbit is running away, you're trying to catch it. You don't have to run faster than the rabbit to catch it because that's impossible. But what you should be thinking of is running farther than the rabbit, because if the rabbit is super fast, you just keep running behind it. If the rabbit is even faster, just keep running, keep jogging behind that rabbit, keep the rabbit in sight. In this example, the rabbit is your eventual Python programming level. So you keep that rabbit in sight, you keep jogging after that rabbit, it keeps getting away, you keep seeing it farther, but you keep jogging. Eventually the rabbit is gonna get tired, eventually the rabbit is gonna run out of food, run out of water, and once you catch up to the rabbit, it's exhausted. It's all about just picking up the rabbit, no harm done, and you just take it with you. I hope that analogy made sense. The main idea in here is that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So stay focused and don't worry about the overwhelming feeling that you're getting. Everybody goes through this. Something that's also very important to talk about is actually debugging and solving challenges. I focus a lot on doing instead of just watching. If you'll watch any of my videos, you'll notice that I always have a mini project that I also refer to as a challenge. And even if you can check out any of my courses on any platform, I always have something called a challenge. That's when you learn the theory, we do a couple of examples, and then you actually have to apply the knowledge that you just learned. And this is where you should start thinking of what would happen if you cannot solve a problem or there's code that you don't understand. Very important tool right now in our day and age is ChatGPT or Bard or whatever AI you prefer. You can just take the code, copy it, chuck it into ChatGPT, and it will give you exactly what that code does and how it can be improved and how it can be solved and etc. But I want you to be very careful with this because it can breed laziness, because ChatGPT will solve it for you instantly. Back in my days when I was learning programming, what I had to do was I had to Google stuff. And because I had to Google stuff, I had to learn multiple different things, try to apply them to my code and see all the different ways that it doesn't work, and then finally find a solution to it. And if you want my opinion, probably most of you are not going to do this because you just want everything really quick, really fast. But it's very important that when you're solving something that you don't know, it's very important that you see all the different ways that it doesn't work. Because once I give you the solution or ChatGPT gives you the solution, it's going to be much more ingrained into your mind. It's going to be rock solid. But if you get the solutions immediately without going through some kind of trial and error, you're not going to appreciate it, and your brain receptors are physically, and this is like physical, real world neuroscience. I'm not a scientist, don't quote me on that, but literally like your brain, your neurons are not going to connect properly, and whenever you see that problem next time, you're not going to find the solution easily. You're not, because you haven't appreciated the first time. I hope what I just said made sense. So very important, just try to solve the issues yourself before consulting ChatGPT. If after like 10 tries and after searching on the web and you still don't find anything, go ahead and look at ChatGPT. And the last point all of my students always struggle with is the imposter syndrome. It's whenever you start anything, and I'm not just talking about programming, whenever you start, I don't know, riding a bike or anything, you always feel that you're not good enough. You feel that like, oh, if you're watching my video or somebody else's video and I solve some problem very easily and you're like, oh, look at him, he was naturally born a good programmer, or oh, he started too early, or oh, I'm too young, or oh, whatever. You can come up with so many excuses, but the truth is, it's just about hard work and staying consistent. Like I seriously sometimes when I'm teaching students courses that I have made, like courses that I code, lines of code that I created, I sometimes stumble on what I've done. So I have to take a minute and think with the student like, oh, wait, how does this work? Let's just check, let's go through it. Because even I, at my level, I've been programming since I was 12. Now I'm 27. That's 15 years of programming, and I still sometimes like look at some code and I'm like, what? How did that work? And then I realize it's my code. I'm like, what? So yeah, whenever you stumble upon something and you feel that you're like, oh, maybe this is not for me, just remember that this is it's an acquiring of knowledge. It's a dripping of knowledge. You slowly get that knowledge, and sometimes that knowledge doesn't stick. So it's the dripping of knowledge, and then the sticking of knowledge, and then the practice, and then you go through it once, twice, you fail, and again and again and again. But the real winners are the ones that persist and go until the end. And that's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. If you want, you can check out my videos to start your programming language. I've already linked the video. I have a playlist. I'm planning on building a lot more. If you want to subscribe, then go ahead. That would be great. Leave me a like as well. That would be incredible. And to be honest with you, I really just hope the most important thing, I probably said this multiple times in the video, the most important thing, but really the most important thing is for you to start. Not tomorrow, not in 2 hours, as soon as this video finishes. Just go, download Python. That's all you need to do. Download Python, download an IDE, and create Hello World. I already linked the video. Get started. That's it. Get started. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, subscribe, like the video, whatever. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.